It's a nice, crisp, mid-March day. We're late winter here in the Northern Great Plains Zone 4. We're gonna go through this landscape bed and get some cleanup done, some pruning, take you through the transition of what's happened to it over the last 14 years. And if you look back, this was the small little bed that was in here, and I just wanted to add more varieties, more selection, and so I expanded it out. I kept the center, and there's still some of the original plants in there. And then if you look over to the left here, that's an area that's all bermed up. I actually started my first vegetable garden plot, got a sod cutter, cut out the sod, and I dumped half of it there. I dumped half of it there, and I created these berms. I like to create different elevation changes whenever I can. I think that contouring helps a tremendous amount when we're doing our landscaping. I'm always amazed when we look at some of our landscape beds coming out of the winter, just how much they can change in just a matter of 60 days. So the project today is similar to a video I did about 3 weeks ago where we did a spring prep and a variety tour. The difference on this one, not only are we going to cover some of the different varieties, it's just older, so we can show you some of the rejuvenation projects that have happened. I lost 2 beautiful Dakota pinnacle birch in this bed about 4 to 5 years ago. We had severe winter dieback on the birch throughout our state, and I probably would have left them, cut back half the tops, but I had a wedding that spring, so I just didn't want to have these half-dead trees. So I took out those 2 Dakota pinnacles and 1 other birch, and we're going to show you the trees that we replaced them with. Let's give you a quick overview of this bed. Now, I have talked about quite a few of these different plants in different videos. That's a Globe, Colorado. Down here we've got a nice little collection, some sedum, a coneflower. This is one of the trees we'll talk about that I put in there instead of the birch, and it is growing fast. The quick fire off in the distance there. Calgary carpet juniper, one of my favorite. This is a big aster, and almost too large. It kind of blocks the view of the rest of the bed there. We do some annual planters in here. There is the emerald carousel barberry. This is a unique little euonymus tree. Winterberry euonymus, prairie radiance. Nice fall color, nice little pink capsules. We've got a larch in the back there. That's a horseman's recurva. We've got a mugo pine that we've kept pruned. And then we've got some Siberian iris and a few other assorted perennials in this bed. We use this little patch here as an annual flowering bed. We've got some of the crocus bulbs coming up there. Some of the first to emerge. We'll get started cutting back some of the sedum here. We've got conga, lime, dynamite, and the neon sedum. I tend to leave most of my perennials now through the winter months. I think the tops provide added protection to help overwintering. I also kind of like the seed heads on the sedum. If we ever get snow, which we do, they peek through. They've kind of got some winter interest. They cut super easy in the spring. The coneflower, yeah, these seeds, the birds, you just lay them out somewhere. They can finish using them for their nourishment rather than throwing them away. I think the birds really enjoy them. Also, nothing wrong with leaving just a little bit of stem there. 2 to 3 inches is about what I shoot for. I think it creates just a little bit of extra support as that new growth emerges. We'll have to be a little bit careful in here as to not step on some of those new emerging crocus. I did another video on pruning back some of the junipers. Calgary carpet was included in that. And we're doing just thinning cuts where we're going to take, I kind of pick them up, shake them, and we'll shoot back in, grab those longest canes. Every season now in the spring, I do this. And the main goal, I don't want to cover up this small little rock here, little accent wall, and then I need that room for the flowers to be planted in here. Calgary carpet's got one of the best emerald green colors, just absolutely beautiful juniper. I have really never seen any burning on this. This is a relatively quick process. You can see here, we're even taking some on the top to get that balance so it doesn't look one-sided. I think it's important to note that I like to get out as soon as I can in the spring when that snow is gone. There's still a little bit of frost right here. But we're getting out there early. If we wait too long and we've got those crocus, then it's a matter of you're going to start damaging them. So right now, just emerging, we can still come over that with a rake. This aster here is one of the original plants. When we moved here, I didn't remove it. And the thing to be careful of With the aster perennial, there's going to be different sizes. There's a couple different colors, bluish into the pinks, the violets, but different asters can get different size. Some are going to stay in that 12 to 18 inch. Well, this thing gets 3 to 4 feet. Now, my wife has encouraged me that it's time to dig this out of here. So once the frost is out of the ground, we're likely going to dig 3/4 of this, maybe even 90% of it, and leave a small clump. Let that kind of start over so it's not such a gigantic plant. But the asters in the fall, oh, you just can't go wrong for bringing in the pollinators for that late food source for them. Look at some of these photos here. The honeybees are just incredible on this, even into November if it hasn't froze back. So it's just a wonderful late fall blooming perennial. I've always been a bit old school using the hand tools. Part of using the hand tools, cleanup I think is just a little bit easier. When you get in there and clip, you can take that branch, put it in a pile. We're going to try some automation on this one though, and I got to admit, with the technology and batteries now, some of the different tools you can get make them so easy to work with, a little bit lighter, more maneuverable. We're going to go ahead then, we're going to just fire this thing up and see how this works, cutting back some of these branches. On some of my earlier YouTube videos, I was doing all hand work, and now I gotta admit that's pretty handy. We'll just cut, go through and pull it out, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit of handwork at the end. One thing to mention, if you're using, this is a Hedge shears. Once you get into perennials lower to the ground, you're going to be dealing with more dust, more dirt. Ants can kind of get in and create mounds in perennials. So if you start running that thing through some of that dirt, you are going to dull your blades quickly. I actually happen to have 2 of these different ones. One I keep just for pruning evergreens to keep it as sharp as I possibly can. And then this one's kind of the workhorse to get some of more of the dirty work that you see that we're doing here. As we move along here, there's yarrow. Yeah, yarrow, you know, I don't know. It's not my favorite perennial. And even though there's some really nice different colors, whether it be the yellows, the whites, shades of pinks and reds, it does self-seed. It is a good drought-tolerant perennial. Just not my favorite due to that self-seeding. I love it when it's in bloom after that. And it tends to kind of just seem like it peters out in areas. So great for naturalizing. What I do for cleanup on this is too wet right now. I actually wait until it dries up, and then I'll just brush, and all that foliage will kind of just flake to the ground. And you could do a little bit of clipping with your hand pruner, but that's really all you have to do with the yarrow. If you look closely here, you can see, look at that, it's already emerging. Okay, and next to us here, this is actually a patch of strawberries. This was self-seeded by bird, and I just let it kind of naturalize here to be a really nice ground cover. All I really do on the strawberries is run a rake over them just to loosen up some of the leaves that have fallen from the other trees and their own leaves. That'll freshen it up, let some of the air get in there. But not much maintenance on the strawberries. We're not after it for the fruit production. The birds tend to take most of them. I'm actually after it just for that nice ornamental ground cover. So I was happy to let this just take off. So we're moving on to the emerald carousel barberry. There's 3 of them in there. Many years ago, I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, another rabbits got in here, and they devoured about half the plants. Since they ruined that form, I had no choice but to rejuvenate them. How they can eat a barberry with those thorns is beyond me, but they do. Even though they're getting just a little bit bigger than I want for my taste, they won't grow much this year. I might do some thinning cuts where we come in and we just take out some of the longer canes, such as that. We recently did a video on the Miss Kim lilac, where we went through and we did the thinning to keep the form of the plant but reduce that overall height. You really got to wear some of the protective gear doing barberries. They do have a thorn. I love it because of the different ways it transitions from that beautiful spring color, the yellow flowers. It gets an excellent fall color, and then these berries are also have a lot of winter interest for us. So it's one of my favorite shrubs. I don't want to cover up this little accent wall. This is where we put in those sod scraps from the garden, created kind of an elevated area. So it's a small retaining wall, but I really like to be able to view that as we come in our driveway. And behind our emerald carousel barberry, we've got a small tree. This is Prairie Radiance Winterberry euonymus. Some of the outstanding features on this is the fall color, kind of a pinkish cherry red, just outstanding, as you can see from the photos here. It's also got this really unique and interesting pink capsule. I've really never had to do anything with this tree other than prune back some of the suckers that you see here. I think we are going to have to go ahead for the first time now and maybe just prune back a couple of these branches, give it just a little bit of room for this columnar Colorado spruce. And I think it'll be good. Maybe it's time to prune up just a few of these lower branches. That'll give us a little bit of that separation for those barberries. I'm happy with how that turned out, the barberry, our euonymus winterberry up there. And then we've got a little more Calgary carpet here that we're going to prune off. You can see here some of these lower branches covering up that little accent wall. Let's go ahead and move along here from that Calgary carpet. Right on the other side of this columnar Colorado spruce here. Beautiful. We've got another aster. Now, I don't know if this is a different variety. It stays shorter. It might be just because it's a little more dry. Since it looks like the snow kind of beat this down, this is where automated tools, they don't do you much good because you can't even get in there without hitting the rock in the ground. So we'll go back to the old-fashioned pruners, get going on this. This is just Siberian iris. Look at that down here. Matted down, kind of frozen. Not sure if we're going to be able to get that cleaned up today. We'll give it a shot in just a second. The Siberian iris have such a short bloom period. I'll be honest, I think the automated tools on Siberian iris, the fall, would be your best time because those stems are still going to be upright. I think it would slice right through it. But now that we're into late winter, it's not textbook to be pulling. You can sometimes pull out roots. You can get away with doing a little bit of that. Just be aware of it, that if you see you're starting to pull out viable growth or roots, you got to back off and get the cutting tool out. This is a combination of being too wet, a little bit froze down. We're not going to be able to use our Hedge shear because it's just too flat. Yeah, the Hedge shear is just like trying to cut leather. It's a tough thing, that Siberian iris. So perennials, keep that in mind when you request low maintenance plants. They're low maintenance to a certain extent. You don't have to replant every year like annuals. But boy, perennial cleanup, if you start getting a lot of them, it's a chore in the spring and fall. No doubt about it. I'm not complaining. I'm just warning you. Next plant up is this mugo pine. This is Pinus mugo pumilo, and this is something that I've kept sheared since the time I planted it. The key is when those candles emerge, you're probably looking at end of May into June. Those candles, they'll elongate out. You want to cut back half to 2/3 of them, and you'll keep this pin cushion shape. Yeah, this is the same plant as the one you see here. This is also Pinus mugo pumilo. That's never been pruned. And look how much bigger it is, how much more informal it is. I won't spend too much more time on this because you can watch that video. I'll flash that across the top of the screen where we talk about several different mugo pines, including some of the upright ones like Tannenbaum mugo pine. Here we've got a Horseman's recurva large. Yeah, interesting plant, huh? Look at that. Yeah, look at how it's got that distorted branching. The larch is a deciduous evergreen. So that's actually, it lost its needles last fall. They get a nice yellow fall color. Cool plant. Yeah, just kind of an accent conversation piece. Nothing to do on that one. And then coral forester grass. Yeah, I also did a video on quite a few different ornamental grasses you can take a look at. We're going to go ahead and get these cut back as well. Where I have seen the light. And I used to prune these back with my Hedge shears, pruners. But I've gotten into a situation in one of my jobs where I had to cut back over 100 of these, and so the automation was definitely worthwhile. What I do when I cut back Carls, try to go in and pick up all the lower leaves that have been folded down and create kind of a little torpedo almost. You're going to have it where I twist it just a little bit. Now when we bring our Hedge shears under there, I actually use my right leg and I'm going to push it through that way. Yeah. And then I'll just do some light trimming around the edges for the remaining that the automated blades didn't get. So this goes pretty quick. Here's some photos of our coral forester as they're emerging, and as they progress through the season. We got to look here at the seed head, and of course now we're into that fall seed head, which is pretty much what it's sold for, is that look right there. It's one of the best grasses used because it's extremely hardy, hardly ever dies out in our cold climate. It doesn't spread. It doesn't have the rhizome that overtakes areas. We'll just rake out some of the fragments fallen stems. This Colorado globe spruce has completely blown out the averages as far as how big they're supposed to get, and I keep it pruned on the top. They can revert to a pyramid if you let them, but I'm just going to see how wide this thing can get. I want to see it get, I don't know, it might get 12, 15 feet wide, and that edging you see down there below, rock edging, I'm probably just going to bring that out and expand it if it becomes too difficult to trim. Well, there's quick-fire hydrangea, absolutely one of my favorite hydrangeas. I think we're going to go ahead, go around to the other side, get a better view of that. But the quick-fire hydrangea, I think it does best if you give it a pruning every spring. And when I say pruning every spring, we're talking late winter before it leaves out, when it's still in the dormant state. Last year was the first year that I left the old flower heads on, and the new growth came from below. I always get a little bit of tip dieback on this hydrangea, and it actually was kind of a nice look. But this year I am going to go ahead, we're going to trim this back a little bit. We'll start by doing hand pruning on the main canes, and then we'll switch over to the Hedge shear. We'll be looking to take off at least a foot, maybe 2 feet in areas. But the quick-fire hydrangea, you cannot beat this for a shrub that draws in the pollinators. It's absolutely unbelievable, the different insects. Man, some of these different things, I don't even know what they are, but it draws in so many. It's just fascinating to be out here and watch this bed here. It used to be kind of covered by a Dakota pinnacle birch, and it did pretty well. And what I'm going to say, a part shade condition as well. I think it's done better with full sun, definitely more uniform. There's 3 of them here, by the way, and I've just allowed them to blend together and be this hedge. Look at how they leaf out. Eventually you get into this gorgeous white flower on that new growth, and then by fall you're going to start seeing that white flower transition over into why it gets its name, that quick fire, kind of a pinkish red. So we'll start by going in, and we're just going to take out some of the bigger canes, almost treating it like it's a thinning type cut. And then once I feel like we've got a lot of the bigger ones out of there, then we'll just switch over to that Hedge shears. It'll have a little bit of an easier time cutting through in there. The main goal doing this pruning, I just want to keep a uniform shape, and I want to get rid of a lot of those old flower heads. It's just going to look cleaner, a little bit more kept up. I'm not necessarily going to get every last flower doing this, but we'll get the majority. I will say I love using a good manual shears, and you get a nice clean cut. With some of those sickle bars, you can really get a mangled, jagged cut. You could bring this back almost down to like 8 inches and let these completely start over and keep them individual. Totally up to you. I just happen to like how they blend together and become just one unit in this area. I can't wait. In just another 2 or 3 months, we're going to be able to look at these beautiful white blooms coming in on this. It looks like it overwintered absolutely fantastic. I don't see really any injury or dieback on this shrub. Nice fresh twigs. Time to lose a layer. Okay, we've made it around the entire bed, and I want to talk about this elm tree here. What originally happened in this bed, as I mentioned at the introduction, we lost 2 Dakota pinnacle birch, and for whatever reason they were just prone to dieback. It was the second time it happened. I wasn't willing to put any more effort into them, so we took those out and I put in this Accolade elm, an incredibly fast grower. Now the elms are good trees for low maintenance sites where you've got difficult locations. That's the place to plant the hybrid elms, whether it be Triumph, Discovery, Accolade, a lot of different varieties that you can pick from. So this eventually, it's going to become a big tree, and it's going to provide shade for our house here, no doubt about it. We've got the tree guard on. This was put on mostly to protect from any type of girdling, from mice. I think it's safe to take this off now. What they also do, and I didn't do it on this elm, you can put them higher up. That'll protect you from the sun scald. That white will block that sun from heating up your cambium and creating frost cracks. I have decided I am going to prune just a couple of these lower branches up. I don't like to go too high too quick. Anytime you leave those lower branches, they're going to create strength in that trunk. They're at about the perfect size. I think I can still handle them with the hand pruners. Maybe not. We'll break out the loppers before we make that cut. I do want to point out, if you look closely here, you don't want to go inside these bark collar ridges. There's one above and there's one below here. You want to make sure you stay outside that. If you go inside, they've actually found you can cause wounding or cankers way inside the trunk. So try to avoid a flush cut there. Also, if you're dealing with a branch that's got a lot of weight, the larger ones, you'd want to cut further out to release the pressure. So when you make your cut, you don't get a tear. This is pretty small. I'm not too worried about it. We're just going to put that blade right down below. And we can just cleanly go straight through there, leaving that little bit of a stub. And then I am going to go ahead. I'm going to take one more. By lifting up these lower branches just a little bit, it's going to allow our lower plantings here just to have a little bit more sunlight. They're going to look a little bit more in balance with the area. In the backdrop is the landscape bed we've been looking at today, and in the foreground is a green spire little leaf linden. This is what took the place of the Dakota pinnacle birch we had to remove. This is a nice medium-sized tree. Here's a close-up of the flower and the seeds developing, which happen to have a really pleasant scent. And here's one final look of our bed. We've got most of the perennials cleaned up, still a little bit to do. We'll wait for spring to get here warm up. Once our lawn has dried out, we're gonna break out a backpack blower and we'll work along the edges, removing just a few more of those leaves. That's all I've got for now. I appreciate you stopping by Garden Hike. We'll see you again next video.